Well, good morning. Meteorologist Cheetah Craft. Thank you so much for joining us on the KHOU11 app. So right now we are just 10 minutes from the National Hurricane Center announcing the 2026 Atlantic Basin Hurricane Outlook. And again, thank you so much for joining us. Hurricane season is set to start in less than 2 weeks. Remember, it begins June 1st and it ends November 30th. And with that in mind, we are all anxiously awaiting from the National Hurricane Center to get the numbers in for this year. Now, with that in mind, we do already have the names in place for 2026. If you have not seen them yet, Arthur, Bertha, Cristobal, Dolly, you can see on the list. It's always fun to kind of pick out the name. Remember, the World Meteorological Organization, so the WMO, uses these every 6 years. And of course, a name is retired if it's just too costly or too deadly, and then you'll never see that name in the list again. But you can go back 6 years ago and you would have seen this same list of names with the exception of a name that is retired. So when this happens, we are going to bring this information to you live. The National Hurricane Center is streaming this. We will kind of override them and they'll kind of pop in with their numbers and the forecast for this year and some of the trends and the outlooks that we're also expecting as we head into the summer months. So we've already heard from Colorado State University. They actually do several releases throughout the year. They do one a little early, and then they'll do one probably towards the end of June, early July, and then sometimes they kind of tweak that and even update those numbers into August. So CSU came in with right around average to below average numbers. So Colorado State University, you can see the average at 14 named storms. Came in around 13, the average is 7, and then the 2025 recap there, you can see how last year, how we did as well. So looking ahead to the forecast, we are trending towards the latter part of the summer, more in an El Nino pattern. And we're going to go into an explanation, kind of why that happens. You know, oftentimes we get these stronger upper level winds, that wind shear that doesn't allow storms to develop as rapidly as they would without that El Nino. So we're going to talk more about that after the release from the National Hurricane Center coming up in just a few minutes. To go over, though, kind of typically on average, how the storm process works as we're looking at the Atlantic Basin. So we're, of course, rounding the corner from May into June. Look how low on average the activity typically is. And then as we get into June, okay, we have seen some storms before, but really the peak of hurricane season is not until early September. So we always talk about the first of June 1st being the start of hurricane season, and the fact that you need to have a plan in place for you and your family and what your plan of action would be. If you are new to the Houston area and you've never been through any type of tropical system, what this means is you want to have that to-go bag ready. And I think by June 1st, it's a great idea that you have that plan, preparations in place in case we would see any tropical activity. And that way you would have that bag ready to go. You'd have your plan of action in place, because we can get activity in early June to even early July. Some of you watching right now, you may even be thinking of Beryl. But really this peaks typically the mid and latter part of August and then into the early and mid part of September. Oftentimes after mid-September, that's when we start to see a dramatic drop out of the Atlantic Basin, out of those storm names. And then as we go through October and November, that's when those water temperatures really start to cool and the development for anything tropical begins to rapidly drop. So again, even though the peak of hurricane season is September the 10th, we can often see some early storms. And as we look at some of the trends with El Nino, June and July, we are very much potentially, possibly could be active. So we'll be monitoring that. But the peak of hurricane season coming in around September the 10th. Looking at, we'll be looking for the update for the forecast numbers from last year into this year, and really talking about El Nino. I'll talk a little bit about this, and then coming up in just a little bit, we have Lance Wood in-house with us. We're going to go over El Nino, some of the numbers coming in from the National Hurricane Center. But bottom line, when we have upper level wind, so wind shear, it limits the growth of thunderstorms. And those thunderstorms really help to initialize those tropical waves that then can lead into a depression, a storm, or a hurricane. And that's what we look at for the Atlantic Basin. I put this together. I thought this would be interesting, you know, as we're trending to the start of hurricane season in less than 2 weeks, as far as our June landfalls. Now, I said that the peak of hurricane season is September the 10th. Look how we have seen, though, plenty of tropical activity even in the month of June. So looking back, even though I say really you need to keep your guard up from mid-August through mid-September, plenty of times in June we can see early development, and sometimes that can come on really, really quickly. It's just kind of the beginning of the sea surface temperatures, the water temperature starting to warm, and we'll start to get some rapid intensification. So looking at years in the past, look how many June landfalls that we've had, not only along the Texas coast, but even along the Gulf Coast. This does not have anything to do with the forecast this year. I show you this because it really only takes one tropical storm, one hurricane, and it doesn't matter what the forecast is, what that number is that predicts how many storms that we could see. Looking at the past, even in the month of June, we have been on the active side. So again, if you're just tuning in right now, if you just tapped into our app, we are awaiting from the National Hurricane Center to give us the latest numbers for our 2026 Atlantic Basin storms, the number for that, and kind of their seasonal outlook and their forecast for this year. Don't forget that the Pacific Basin and the Atlantic Basin, they both have two different storm lists. And so what is the forecast for one does not at all say what the forecast for the Pacific would be. Two completely different lists there. And we'll be looking for the Atlantic Basin, which would then, you know, impact the Gulf and potentially into the Atlantic and across the East Coast as well. So hurricane season does begin June 1st. It ends November 30th. Sometimes we can even see some pre-activity before June 1st. We're already watching and monitoring even the potential of some waves off the East Coast that have shown maybe some signs of life there, but not yet. We haven't had anything yet. The list of names, I went over this. This is from the World Meteorological Organization. They do rotate these every 6 years. And as you see the list of names, sometimes it's fun to kind of pick your name out. Do you remember Nana? I remember that 6 years ago. Or Sally, Teddy, Vicky, Wilfred. We'll see how far we go. And no longer, if we do get to Wilfred, now that'd be an above average season, no longer do we go into the Greek alphabet. They stopped that as well. What you won't see on the list is if we had anything too costly or deadly, that's when the name is retired, and you will never see that on the list again. But these names are from 6 years ago, and this is for the 2026 Atlantic Basin names. Also, two different lists, two different storm names from the Pacific Basin to the Atlantic Basin. So you'll only be hearing about this in the Atlantic Basin. If we're tracking anything, let's say closer to Hawaii or in the Pacific, that'll have its own complete set of storm names like you've probably seen or heard in the past as well. We did get one already early outlook from Colorado State University. That's from Phil Klotzbach. He releases that information each year really early, typically in April, and then pretty much throughout late spring into our early summer months, we'll get another update. And then typically as we go into July, Colorado State will also tinker with their numbers. So it's always interesting. It'll be interesting today to look at NOAA's outlook, Colorado State's outlook, see the comparison, maybe the differences of those numbers, kind of what that means for us. We'll also hear some question and answers, typically from the director there, the director, Dr. Mike Brennan, and he can speak, you know, a little more closely, even along specifics of the Gulf to the East Coast, and then a broader outlook just overall for the Atlantic Basin. But we are expecting slightly below average storms. And when I say slightly, I mean the average is 14. 13 is coming in, you know, just a number below there. So it's almost at average. The forecast for the hurricanes is at 6. And then from CSU, when you're looking at major hurricanes, that's indicating a category 3 or higher. That would also be at 2, even though our average is 3. Last year, we did see 4 major hurricanes. And as far as the hurricanes, we saw 5. 13 of those, though, were just named storms. So you can kind of see how those numbers specifically break down Now, I'm actively listening in to see if our producer sees anyone from the National Hurricane Center. When they pop in, we're going to give you the latest outlook from NOAA, and that's really the outlook that we will use. So even though the peak of hurricane season is going into the September the 10th, we can often get some early activity. And typically with above average sea surface temperatures, last year we had some early activity early in June and into mid-June. And then we had a real big lull. And that's when we started seeing some of the peak of the activity. Okay, our producer just got in my ear to let me know that the announcement is starting right now. So let's listen in.
Both in the room and virtual. We will first take questions from reporters in the room, and then we will shift to the virtual questions, which may be submitted within the Q&A feature in the webinar platform at any time. Our speakers today are Rear Admiral Chad Carey, NOAA Corps Director and NOAA Marine and Aviation Operations Assistant Administrator, Dr. Neil Jacobs, NOAA Administrator and Undersecretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere, Ken Graham, National Weather Service Director, and FEMA Acting Region 4 Regional Administrator, Robert Ash. It is a privilege to introduce Rear Admiral Chad Carey. Rear Admiral Carey serves as the 20th Director of NOAA's Commissioned Officer Corps and as Assistant Administrator for NOAA's Office of Marine and Aviation Operations. In addition to leading the NOAA Corps, one of the nation's 8 uniformed services, Rear Admiral Carey oversees NOAA's fleet of 15 research and survey ships and 10 specialized aircraft, including the agency's hurricane hunters. Please join me in welcoming Rear Admiral Chad Carey.
Thank you, Kim. Welcome to NOAA's Aircraft Operations Center, home of NOAA's Aircraft Operations was hurricane hunters, which you can see directly behind me. These flying meteorological data collection machines are one of the most important tools we have to better understand hurricanes. The data collected using NOAA aircraft improve hurricane track and forecast intensity forecasts by as much as 20%. This year, the P3 are celebrating 50 years of service thanks to the talented professionals that operate and service them, as well as our stakeholders that support us. Despite their age, they are equipped with state-of-the-art technology inside and out, making these aircraft highly capable tools for observing hurricanes. An additional aircraft that's not here with us today, but is part of the observation suite, is the high-altitude Hurricane Hunter, which is a Gulfstream 4. The Gulfstream flies at 45,000 feet, flying above and around hurricanes to observe and detect weather systems, such as steering currents that affect the cyclone below. The P3s behind me fly at about 10,000 feet through the eye wall of a hurricane using turboprop engines, a long-standing proven technology in one of the world's riskiest flight environments. The aircraft carry a suite of specialized instrumentation used to help us better understand and forecast hurricane intensity, structure, and the hazards that impact the communities in the path of these storms. For example, the P3's tail Doppler and lower fuselage radar systems scan the storm vertically and horizontally, giving scientists and forecasters a real-time, three-dimensional look at the storm that no other aircraft can obtain. These are the only aircraft in the world equipped with tail Doppler radars. Wingtip sensors measure water and ice content within hurricane rain bands that work to improve rainfall forecasts. And at the same time, additional instruments are capturing ocean surface winds, precipitation structure, 3D winds, and ocean wave heights in better detail than ever before. NOAA's ability to adapt the Hurricane Hunter aircraft configuration and test new instruments helps us deliver even new, more valuable information to the forecasters, while also being a flying test laboratory for rapidly evolving technology. One technological advancement to note is deploying uncrewed aircraft from these P3s into the storm environment. These drones, launched from the P3s, can dwell for long periods of time in the vertical profile, collecting essential low-altitude data on tropical cyclone structure. Last year, for the first time, one achieved a record-setting 120-minute flight duration and provided the first-ever video from an uncrewed aircraft system from inside the storm. From the ports around the Gulf and East Coast, NOAA also deploys autonomous uncrewed marine systems to intercept these storms and gather critical ocean observations. All of the data collected by our aircraft and uncrewed systems is provided to the meteorologists at NOAA's National Hurricane Center. This real-time data allows them to constantly refine the forecast, helping them to keep people safe, allow communities to prepare, and minimize unnecessary evacuations. While technology continually advances, the most valuable resource that operations rely on today is our dedicated team of technical professionals and NOAA Corps officers. They are crucial for operating and maintaining our aircraft, and they are part of NOAA's team that is dedicated to serving the public. Today's annual Atlantic Hurricane Outlook is one of the many ways the agency offers to encourage the public to prepare ahead of and throughout the hurricane season. I would now like to introduce our next speaker. This individual has been a scientific leader in weather prediction for most of his professional career. Please join me in welcoming NOAA's 12th Undersecretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmospheres and the NOAA Administrator, Dr. Neil Jacobs.
Thank you, Admiral Carey, for that introduction, and also thank you for hosting this event. I would like to express my deepest appreciation to the team here at AOC, the Hurricane Hunter pilots, the crew, the maintenance folks that maintain these planes. We're here to announce NOAA's 2026 hurricane season outlook, but before I get to the numbers, I want to recognize the incredible efforts and expertise and dedication of the NOAA's workforce. NOAA is home to the world's leading scientists, model experts, and meteorologists. Their work ensures public safety, national security, and enhancement of the U.S. economy. In the National Weather Service, we have forecasters that issue accurate forecasts across the country 24/7 for all types of severe weather. I know we're talking about hurricanes today, but they're working all year long. Winter storms, tornadoes, floods, wildfire events. All the models that we run at NCEP, the National Center for Environmental Prediction. This includes the National Hurricane Center. I'd love to thank the National Hurricane Center for their excellent work, particularly last year where they set a new record in forecast accuracy for intensification. Hurricane Melissa was accurately predicted to rapidly intensify before the storm even developed. We also have NOAA Research. This is where the numerical weather prediction is developed. These are the folks that develop the models. We have the Hurricane Analysis and Forecast System, or HAFS, which is going to be our flagship model this year for cyclone intensity. They also work on cutting-edge development of instruments. This includes the drones and the gliders. We're now getting into the world of running artificial intelligence-based forecast models. This work's being developed there too, as well as the work at Hurricane Research Division, which advances our understanding of rapid intensification of these storms. We have the National Ocean Service, which develops the coastal and ocean models, obviously essential to understanding sea surface temperature and air-sea interaction. They also manage the ocean observing systems, ensure the waterways and the ports are open after a storm. We have NESDIS, the branch that handles NOAA satellites. We have geostationary satellites, which are the GOES, which you're probably familiar with the visible satellite imagery of these hurricanes, and also the infrared. But we also have low Earth orbiting satellites with JPSS. This is where the microwave sounders come in. This is the data that drives a lot of the numerical weather prediction models. We also have the Marine Aviation and Operations, as well as the NOAA Corps, the folks which you see here today. They're in charge of the ships, the planes, all the data collection, not just for hurricanes, but also fisheries management, among other things. Behind me, we have the two P3s, Kermit and Miss Piggy, celebrating their 50th anniversary of flying into storms. These are 8 to 10 hour flights. They have the tail Doppler radar, which you just heard about. They deploy dropsondes. We also have a high altitude jet, and we're bringing another 2 online here soon. These are the planes that fly over the storms and deploy instruments through the storms. All this data goes into the computer models to better generate our forecasts. I'm incredibly proud of the amazing work that these public servants do for our country. Okay, on to the numbers. For the Atlantic hurricane season, NOAA is predicting a below normal season for 2026, with roughly a 55% chance of being below normal, a 35% chance of near normal, and a 10% chance of above normal. This equates to 8 to 14 named storms with winds at or above 39 miles an hour. Of these, 3 to 6 hurricanes with winds at or above 74 miles an hour, and 1 to 3 major hurricanes, that's your category 3 to 5, with winds at or above 111 miles an hour. In the central and eastern Pacific, we're expecting a 70% chance of above normal activity. The eastern Pacific, we're expecting 15 to 22 named storms, 9 to 14 hurricanes, 5 to 9 major hurricanes. And in the central Pacific, we're expecting 5 to 13 tropical cyclones. These percentages are based on multiple factors that represent a probabilistic distribution, which includes a lot of information. But even though we're expecting a below average season in the Atlantic, it's very important to understand that it only takes one. We have had category 5s make landfall in the past during below average seasons. What's driving this forecast is largely an El Nino event. There's a 98% chance of El Nino conditions occurring later this season, and an 80% chance that this El Nino will be moderate to strong. In the Atlantic, the El Nino increases the vertical wind shear, which disrupts the outflow at higher levels, makes it harder for development of the eastern waves coming off of Africa to strengthen into storms. However, in the central and eastern Pacific, the El Nino reduces the vertical wind shear, essentially the opposite of the Atlantic, which is why we're expecting above average season in addition to the warmer sea surface temperatures there. We have several new observing systems that we're bringing online this year. As you heard about earlier, we have uncrewed aircraft systems. We tested these over the last couple of years with Black Swift drones used operationally this year for the first time in the HAFS model. The tests that we ran in the experiments last year showed that inclusion of this data from these drones increased the intensity forecast accuracy by roughly 10%. We also have uncrewed surface vehicles and submersible gliders. In addition to the observing systems, we're doing a lot of work on the modeling front. We're introducing an AI-based version of the GFS, as well as an AI global ensemble forecast system, the hybrid GEFS. We also have a new AI-based hurricane forecast model that we've developed in partnership with Google DeepMind, which we used experimentally in last year's hurricane season. There are also advances in the physics-based models. The Unified Forecast System has been testing an experimental high-resolution seasonal forecast system. We also have the Office of Water Prediction, which will be rolling out high-resolution flood inundation mapping, which couples to the hydrological forecast. This provides the emergency manager's visualization of predicted inundation at the street and neighborhood level. The Hurricane Center has some new communication products as well. They're implementing a new version of the forecast cone, which was tested last year. This cone includes tropical storm and hurricane watches and warnings in inland areas. We're also issuing new products and services in support of storm surge forecasting for the Hawaiian Islands. Lastly, the Hurricane Center is testing an experimental version of even a newer cone. Since 2007, the cone has been based on absolute track error, but this new experimental cone accounts for forward motion and directional or lateral uncertainty. This is a much better way to independently visualize uncertainty in both direction and timing. For the official forecast guidance, go to hurricanes.gov. June 1st is almost here. Be ready, have a plan, listen to your state and local emergency managers. Preparation is essential. You can learn more at ready.gov. For more on storm preparedness, I'll now welcome National Weather Service Director Ken Graham.
Thank you, Dr. Jacobs. Some great information there for everybody, and highlighting some big improvements going forward. So it's a very exciting time. So just thank you, and thank you, Admiral Carey, as well. So just saluting this incredible team behind us. And I just wanted to definitely echo what Dr. Jacobs said, just saluting the employees of NOAA, just an amazing group. I don't know, every day I seem to be more humbled to be at the helm of the Weather Service, and just looking at the whole crew here in blue and others supporting this mission. We can't do it without you, so just a big thank you. Great to be here at AOC. Just an amazing place, a lot of operations, but I definitely want to thank somebody that's here on stage. This is our lead seasonal hurricane forecaster, Matt Rosencrans. These numbers, right? They're just not, just generated by random. There's a lot of science that goes in to these numbers every single year. So I want to thank Matt and your team for everything that you've done. And also congratulate Matt, because this will be his last seasonal outlook, as he's going to our lab to train the next generation of Outlook scientists, which is absolutely amazing. So I'm glad to have him in the test bed train the next generation. So he's absolutely amazing, and he's here with his dad. His dad put your hand up there. So congratulate both of them here for such a great job and all these years of service. So seriously, being able to train the next generation is a huge thing. But on behalf of NOAA, the Weather Service, and quite frankly, the American people, thanks for your service. Just absolutely amazing amount of work over the years. So it's great to be here, and I really salute the aircraft operations folks. Wow. I got to fly into Hurricane Helene, and one of these, I'm not sure which one behind me, I didn't look where they were parked, but it was an amazing experience, but just an incredible mission. Heroes, honestly. They go towards the storm so we can get people away from the storm. It's just quite simple as that. So what you all do is just amazing. We can't do it without you. So we've never been more prepared for hurricane season as we are now. Dr. Jacobs highlighted some of the new models, the new technology, the service improvements. So it's absolutely amazing. Looking at the new cone from the National Hurricane Center, just saluting everyone there, always progressing, always going forward, just being able to have the inland effects, just the cone doesn't stop. The impacts don't stop at the coast. The impacts go way inland, and we've seen that over and over and over again, including most of the fatalities end up being inland as well. So as a result, looking at a cone that highlights all those inland threats is a big step forward for the public to understand what these threats are. And Dr. Jacobs also talked about the experimental cone. I mean, you almost got to retrain yourself a little bit, because we always talked about the last 5 years of error, and 67% of the time the center stays in the cone, 1/3 out. Anyway, we've got to retrain ourselves. It's okay. So having this new cone, I think, is a big step forward to actually represent about 90% of the possibilities of where the center could be. I think is a big leap forward. So kudos to that new representation of it. I do want to announce as well, with the flood inundation mapping that Dr. Jacobs mentioned, by the end of September, we'll have 100% of the country covered. This was a long effort. And a lot of you in the media know this is a game changer, and I hear it from the states, I hear it from the counties, I hear it across the board, across the country. They said, hey, this is a game changer for us to be able to represent what could flood in a storm, or even a thunderstorm or a hurricane or whatever it may be. So that is a huge step forward. And you heard the forecast for the Pacific, so having those services for Hawaii for the first time ever, we're going to be able to issue storm surge watches and warnings for Hawaii, for most of the islands, the main islands of Hawaii, just like we do for the mainland, Puerto Rico as well, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. So that is a big leap forward as we really look at potential tropical surge flood mapping and all that for the Hawaiian Islands. So just really excited about that. The other tool that is new, and this one's exciting as well, getting some really good feedback on this one, it's the Urban Rain Rate Dashboard. So it's a new tool that we're really launching this year to look at urban areas, cities. There's 60 cities represented, and ahead of time you'll be able to see what the dangers are from flooding. Actually look at the information in those urban areas that are particularly dangerous for flash flooding, as the runoff isn't there, so you can get flash flooding really quick in these urban areas. So please check out all of these new products and services and everything into this season. It's exciting. So look, preparedness. We've got to do it early. I don't know, it's a nice day. Hangar doors are open. Now's the time to start thinking about your Hurricane Preparedness Day. The sun is shining. Let's get it done. So early preparedness is absolutely everything, period. End of story. The actions that you take today really get you ready for the hurricane season. So we're ready, right? We're ready. So we need to get the American public ready as well. And don't let words like below or average, don't let all those words change the way you prepare. And Dr. Jacobs, you said it just takes one. And you go back in time, I can think of some of these. Betsy was a September storm in 1965, and Louisiana still talks about Betsy. You think about 1983 is an August storm, Alicia, still talking about Alicia. 1992, Andrew was an August storm as well. So even in below average, even if you have a few storms, they could be big ones. So we got to be ready. The other, I'm going to repeat this every single time I do this, is the fact that, I think not just officials, but the public thinks the big storms are going to come across the Atlantic. You're going to see them. You're going to have weeks' notice, plenty of time. That is not the case. And this stat hit me when I was at NAC. It hit me, I never forgot it, and it still hits me today. Looking back in time at our records, every Category 5 that's made landfall in this country was a tropical storm or less 3 days out. So they rapidly intensify, they get here quick. So everybody, you think you might have a week on your timeline. The reality is you may only have days. That's why that preparedness early is absolutely everything, and I will repeat that in this position, next position, retirement. I don't care what it is over the next 20 years. I'm going to keep repeating that stat constantly. The other one, too, is especially a season like this, there'll never be a Hurricane Justa. We'll never make that a name. There's no such thing as just a Cat 1, just a tropical storm, just a Cat 2. That is absolutely not the case. It doesn't matter what it is. You got to look at the size, the forward motion. Little wiggles matter on the impacts. Even the smallest storm, if it's slow enough and big enough, is going to create catastrophic flooding and storm surge. All right? There's no such thing as Hurricane Justa. We've got to make sure the public pays attention to every single one of these systems and the actual impacts, not the category, not the name, but the actual impacts associated with that storm. And that includes the tornadoes, heavy rain, damaging winds, even the high surf and rip currents as well, including the storm surge. So flooding, we got to talk about flooding. I mean, we just got to keep repeating over and over the dangers of flooding. So you look at the last 10 years, over half of the deaths are flooding, and a lot of those are inland, and most of those are in vehicles. So we know what's causing the fatalities. So we've got to get the word out. We've got to get the preparedness out. We need everybody's help to be able to do that. So being able to look at where you live in a flood zone and be prepared for that, and where you got to go in the evacuations, getting ready, getting your home ready, looking at that evacuation plan. And I don't think the public totally realizes 6 inches of fast-moving water will knock you off your feet. 12 inches will carry most cars away. And even people that think I got some big, giant SUV, well, guess what? About a couple feet of water will wash that one away too. It doesn't matter. So we've got to keep reminding people of these things. Turn around, don't drown. We've got to keep reminding everybody of that. Develop that evacuation plan now. And I think the big thing is, please, you heard it already said by Dr. Jacobs, please listen to those local officials. A lot of people say they don't evacuate because they don't want to sit in the traffic or travel 200-300 miles, when the reality is they may only have to go 10 or 20, 30 miles inland. Please listen to the local officials. You have to understand what you have to do ahead of time and have that plan. Begin planning early and being able to do that. Check on your neighbors, check on your family. Make sure to have that preparedness kit for weeks ahead of time. Make sure you got days, if not a week, of supplies ahead of time. Right now there's no lines. Stock up. Stock up now. That's what I would do. It's a perfect time to go get that information. The non-perishable food, medicine. The last winter storm event really opened my eyes on something. There were a lot of fatalities for people that didn't account for medicine and dialysis. We have to remind people over and over, you're not going to have access to those things for a week or more after a storm. They have to be prepared for these things. So especially any special needs like that, we got to remind them, be ready, because those are preventable if we can get them ahead of time. And also make sure we account for the pets. Too many heartbreaking stories after these events, seeing the pets wandering around. Got to account for the pets going forward. So planning on no electricity for weeks. Make sure to have that, the radio, the flashlight, the NOAA weather radio, still the greatest tool. Have it. We got it. It'll alert you. It'll get the information when you need it. A couple of places to get information: the National Hurricane Center. Go to hurricanes.gov. Get the latest. That's part of the story, maybe the biggest. Have the latest information. That forecast changes. There's something called there's an old term, when you look at the first forecast, you lock onto that. There's some social science that says that you can't lock onto that first forecast. You got to pay attention to it. It can change with time. So got to go to hurricanes.gov, get the latest. Go to weather.gov, the forecast offices across the country, getting the information out going forward is huge. And also ready.gov, we'll hear more about that here in a little bit with FEMA. And listo.gov, para información sobre la tormenta en español. So there's information to get in Spanish as well for the Spanish-speaking community. Listen to those local officials, and I'm going to wrap this up. Look, even after the storm, it's still dangerous. I need the media's help, right? People think the storm's passed, I'm all safe. You're not, right? The indirect fatalities associated with these tropical systems usually exceed the direct. What a statement. So they exceed the direct. So that's everything from down power lines, displaced wildlife, that's contaminated water, gas leaks. This is harsh, but it's real, and I say it every time. After a storm, it's not the time to read how to use your chainsaw for the first time. These are the realities of what we deal with. We see what hurts people, and that we need the media to keep reminding people. Generator safety, I will also scream and yell as loud as I can about the generator safety. After Hurricane Laura, with a 18-foot storm surge, Mike, we lost more people to generator safety than we did the storm surge. We've got to keep reminding people to use generators safely outdoors, away from your windows. So we're ready, folks. We're ready more than ever at NOAA for the hurricane season. We need everybody to be ready as well. I'm going to give a chance for FEMA here to hear from FEMA. So we're lucky and fortunate here, excited to have Region 4 Administrator from FEMA, Rob Ash.
Hey, good afternoon, folks. I'm really excited to be here today to spend a little bit of time talking to you about FEMA and what we're doing in preparation for the upcoming season. I'll start first by saying that the partnership that we have with NOAA, with the Hurricane Center, those are extremely important partnerships that we maintain. All year long we work closely together, but we really start to ramp up during this time. Some of the things that you heard here today talked about in terms of changes in technology and the ability to see a little bit further out are really important to us at FEMA because it gives us the ability to start our planning process much further than we used to do just 3 to 5 years ago. So now we start looking at storms that are coming off of the coast of Africa 144 hours out at a minimum. We start watching them well before then, but we really start looking at planning and getting ready that far out, and that's the whole organization, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. We also make sure that we don't lose sight of the rapidly intensifying storms that you just heard about. Those are the ones that are really scary because we don't have as much time to prepare, but we have greater awareness now and we can start earlier on those, and so it does give us an opportunity to begin that work within FEMA, across other federal agencies, and definitely with our state partners. I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing at FEMA, and I'll do that in terms of kind of 3 tiers. At the highest level, the national level, we start with the guidance that we get from Secretary Mullins, and it is clear to us that he wants us to be focused and ready for this upcoming hurricane season. At the next level, we have FEMA headquarters at the national level, if you will, where my boss, Bob Fenton, has a variety of things that are on the menu now for us to be able to prepare at the national level. And that's not just us, say, here in Region 4, but it's also other regions that are impacted by hurricanes, Region 6, Region 3, even Region 9, which has responsibility for Hawaii and some of our territories. So we're working at multiple levels to make sure that we're focused and we're ready. Within this region, Region 4, our focus is the same as it is every year. We have a very deliberate process that starts months out in terms of the things that we need to do in order to be ready as a regional team. That team includes our state partners. Nothing that we do is not without our state and our tribal partners. So we work very closely with them. We have a series of exercises, of rock drills or rehearsal of concept drills that allow us to anticipate, prepare, and identify gaps in our resources so that we can make adjustments when the time comes. The last thing that I said is that emergencies are.
Okay, so the announcement is just wrapping up. If you're just now tuning in, here's what the National Hurricane Center is predicting. Now, this forecast is something we will be referring back to you all summer long, and we'll bring you the latest updates as soon as anything starts to develop or form in the Atlantic. We just heard from the National Hurricane Center. I'm now joined with Lance Wood from the Harris County Flood Control District. There's a lot to unpack with their forecast, kind of something that we were expecting as we're trending, into an El Nino late summer. But I appreciate you coming in, and we're going to break these numbers down kind of together this morning.
That sounds great. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So first we'll talk about, it's right at or below average with these numbers, but both of us said that really has no indication of sometimes the impacts that we could see here or even along the Gulf Coast.
Yeah, I mean, it's good news for folks that we're not going to have, it looks like one of those really busy years. We're all thankful for that. But yeah, even in the announcement, you heard the director of the Weather Service there talking about these strong El Nino years, and he referenced 83, referenced 92. Those are seasons that had major hurricanes. They just don't have very many storms.
I thought it was interesting when you're talking about 83. A lot of residents here will remember Alicia, and you do as well. You said you were in Sharpstown when Alicia moved in.
I grew up in Sharpstown, and I remember it vividly. It was an early morning arrival. The eye went over our house, blew down our fences. I remember asking my father about it. I didn't really understand what a hurricane was or how it worked, and I learned a lot, and it got me interested in weather.
And as people are listening to kind of soak this in, I think Alicia in August, you see what a low storm count we had for that 1983 season. And we've had seasons like that, that have also had storms. But, to think all of June, all of July, and then just in August, are you kind of getting your first indication of some tropical activity? That just shows you really can't let your guard down even in these El Nino seasons.
Yeah, and that season we had a strong El Nino already in place when the season started. So you're right, the A storm didn't happen until August.
Yeah, and to talk about El Nino just a little bit, because people at home may be thinking, also remember, they touched briefly about it, you've got the Atlantic Basin and you've got the Pacific Basin. And those are two different storm lists and forecasts, and El Nino can actually have impacts on both. So we heard for the Atlantic Basin, it's a lower storm count, but for the Pacific Basin, it'll actually be the opposite.
Yeah, and it's that warm water that's out there in the Pacific, in the tropical Pacific. That's what is the El Nino. That is the fuel for more storms over there. But in our neck of the woods, we get the stronger winds that kind of blow across the tropics and the increased vertical wind shear.
Yes, and so when Lance is talking about that vertical wind shear, it literally cuts the tops of those thunderstorms off, so it just can't develop as if those winds, were weak. And we have seen that, of course, in our past seasons as well. But looking ahead to the season, so the count, it's 8 to 14, which our average is 14. So it's kind of just below where that average is. We were expecting that. And then as far as the major hurricanes, 1 to 3, where the average is 3. So still, very probable that, we're going to be busy during this hurricane season.
And that range of 8 to 14 is actually kind of large, and I think it has to do with a little bit of uncertainty of exactly how strong that El Nino gets. If it's very strong, like some of our models are indicating, then you might be closer to that 8. And if it comes in as not a record or really strong, then you might be a little closer to the top end of those numbers.
Lance, it's hard to be specific, but what does this mean for Harris County residents?
Well, we always use this when I even worked for the Weather Service before. We always use that seasonal outlook to get people just thinking about preparedness. Because as we know, it only takes one to cause us an issue. So we used this as to, hey, the season's coming. Get prepared, have your plan developed.
I know, and that's really the key. They even said that as well. Leading into June 1st, which is the start of hurricane season, it is time to think about your plan of action and what you would do, especially for anybody new to the area. And that leads me to my next question. What should new or just Houston residents in general do now to prepare?
Yeah, well, one of the first things I tell people, are you in a storm surge risk zone? Because that's a different plan than if you're not, because we run from the water and we hide from the wind. So that's one of the first things, elevation of where you live. Are you in an evacuation zone? If you're further inland, your main issue is going to be protecting your house from the winds and then handling a power outage. So these are some of the things that go into your hurricane plan.
I know, and with those power outages, on the lucky side. That's like a 3-day time span for some of these larger events. That can be almost like a 2-week time
Yeah.
span, and we know that very well, here.
Yeah, after Beryl, that was a reminder for a lot of folks in Houston that you can have your power out more than a week. Category 1 hurricane, what if it was a Category 3 or 4? Don't like to think about that, but then you're talking about weeks.
And I love that
You
FEMA
know?
said it's so important that we listen to our local officials. Some people who want to think that they have their own plan, it's really, really
Yes.
important if local officials tell you to evacuate, or if they tell you to hunker down, it's important that we heed those warnings.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, any official source now is really important versus what you might just see from anybody on social media.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
Yes.
noise out there
A
when there's
lot.
a storm out there. And really follow trusted sources and yes, local official advice for your actions.
Yeah, okay, so Lance, you're with the Harris County Flood Control District. What do y'all do? What are your alerts for the Houston residents?
Yeah, well, we're really busy, of course, when any kind of big storm season. I work for Jeff Lindner. He's got a pretty big name in the area.
Of
So,
course.
our main goal, of course, is flood mitigation, flood preparedness, and then we have the flood warning system. A lot of people sign up for that.
Yes.
So if we have bayou flooding or channel flooding, you can get alerts.
I love that.
Near you.
I love to get those alerts. KHOU is also partnered with y'all, and we
Yep.
show those alerts as well. So it's a great idea to have those notifications turned on. So how do people sign up? How do people
It's
go through
easy
that?
to sign up. You just go to the Harris County Flood Control website and you sign up. So yeah, it's easy.
That's so important. I mean, for tropical season, but also, a week of rainy
Yeah.
weather as well. So what do residents need to know if a storm's coming and they don't plan on evacuating, if they want to ride this out inside their home?
Yeah, so the big thing is, can you keep the wind out of your home? Maybe, brace your garage door, cover windows, things like that with plywood. But also the supplies factor, days ahead of a threat, places will run out of supplies.
Yep.
So make sure you have plenty of water if you're staying, and make sure you have battery operated equipment and non-perishable food. And there's a lot of places you can go to find out what should be in that kit, that go bag, or if you're going to leave, or the kit if you stay. And so, readyharris.org is one of them. We'll have that information. And then hurricanes.gov has that information. So there's a lot of places that have that information.
Yeah, I love that. They do get a lot of specifics. And looking ahead to hurricane season, we spoke a little bit about this, but what should residents do now to prepare for hurricane season that begins in less than 2 weeks?
Just getting them thinking about it and making a plan. I keep it pretty simple because we found out way back with Hurricane Rita, 20 years ago, a lot of people left that were inland, mainly because they hadn't thought about it. They didn't have a plan. And, obviously they're very nervous about a major hurricane out in the Gulf. And so what do you do if you don't have a plan? You might just, I'm just going to leave. Where if you have a plan, you might feel more comfortable staying if you're inland.
Yeah, and speaking of inland, I do love all the new updates from the National Hurricane Center, how they're now inland so people can really understand the impact and not just about landfall. I think before in the past, they've also updated the cone. We were talking about that.
Yeah.
But that
There's a few
inland, I think,
changes.
will be a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the problems that we've had is people just focus on the cone and not the hazards, around the cone. And so they're now showing those inland warnings with the cone. So it really highlights that, a hurricane's not a line on a map. It's an area that's affected. And some hurricanes are very large, like with Ike, very large hurricane. So they come in different sizes. So I love the fact that we're now highlighting those inland watches and warnings.
I do too. So what is the Harris County Flood Control District doing to prepare for hurricane season this year?
Oh, we have a big plan.
Okay.
So we have a lot of different groups there. But yeah, we have plans for if we're impacted. Of course, Jeff Lindner and myself will probably go to Transtar a couple of days ahead. That would be our plan.
Right.
But yeah, we have to have sort of make sure we're ready with our equipment because we're doing a lot of projects out there. So we have to ready the equipment that might be, get it in a safe place as well.
Oh,
so there's a lot of things to think about.
I know, and I also love with the National Hurricane Center how they're also releasing those forecasts even longer. I know they can change. There's rapid intensification, but I like that we're going to have even an early bird eye open to the public of something that could possibly be brewing.
Oh yeah, the tropical weather outlook has really been a success.
Yes, I agree.
It goes out 7 days, so something could form days in advance. This is one of the first things I look at every day of the hurricane season, is I look at that tropical weather outlook. So
Okay, well, any last pieces of advice for anybody watching right now?
just again, it's a reminder that hey, the season it kind of always creeps up on us. Here we are in late May already, so we don't have a whole lot of time here before June 1st. So yeah, just get that plan in place. Think about what your greatest threat is. Are you in the storm surge zone, or are you a little bit further inland?
I know, especially when sometimes the weather is quiet. I mean, it's not right now, but sometimes when we do, it's kind of like we forget about hurricane season until it kind of smacks us on the face. So this is a forecast that we will be referring back to all summer long, and we'll bring you the latest updates as soon as a storm starts to form in the Atlantic. So you'll want to head right now to the KJ11 app. Make sure you turn on the push notifications so you get the latest weather alerts and impacts right to your phone. Lance Wood, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Hope you all have a great day.